Hey, friends and followers. Glad you are here with me again tonight. And I'm excited to be here on Facebook Live. We have a wonderful guest tonight. His name is Chris Shryack, and I have known Chris for 5, 6, 8 years now. It's been a while.
Probably 8 years.
8 years? Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome. You're awesome.
Thank you. And so why I brought Chris here tonight is because Chris and I we've known each other. We've kind of been in the same circles for a long time. We met through some personal development work that we were both doing at the time. And I think the first time I actually met Chris, he was on the stage speaking and talking about some of the things he'd been through and the growth he'd been through and it really impressed me. And the stories he told, which I honestly don't remember what you said, but I remember the feeling you left me with. I was like, this is a guy I've got to go meet. And sure enough, like later that day, I think it was, I was able to connect with you because there's 1,000 people at this conference. And I was able to connect with you, and we had just hit it off, having a great conversation. And absolutely loved everything that we talked about. And every time we caught up after that was the same way. We occasionally catch up on social media and that. And so it was just a great connection. And then as we've kind of been going through this whole, I don't even know what to call it anymore. If we're going through 2020, let's just say it that way.
Let's get through it.
It's 2020, right? And so as we've been going through 2020, I've seen you pop up on my feed more and more. I've seen a couple of your emails hit my inbox and that. And it got me thinking, I was like, Chris is one of these guys that everyone I know needs to meet because you have such a powerful story. And you've accomplished some pretty amazing things in your life. You come through some pretty amazing things. And so I think it'd be really valuable to have people hear that story, hear what you do. So, we're going to go through the talk tonight, or the conversation tonight. Let's put it that way, because that's really what this is. The conversation is just kind of revolve around this idea of from adversity to accomplishment, because that's kind of what you've become an expert in, I would say. And it's also, as you told me, which I was really excited about this, you told me that is the title of an upcoming book that you're writing. So I am really intrigued to get into that. And we'll do that here in just a minute. But Chris, give me a little bit more. I know you've been in real estate. I know you've been a top producer. I know you've been in the timeshare and vacation business, and you've been a top producer there. And I know you're now in coaching the top tier of sales representatives, 6 figures and above, right? So give me some perspective, like walk people through a little bit of your background, your career, where you came from, and what you do now, just so people have a background if they don't know you. I think it'd be good for them to get to know you a little bit.
That'd be great. And before we go any further, Tony, the introduction when we met, so picture this, because everyone has a perspective, right? And one of the things that, if we're talking about Tony Bodo, book author, a guy that handles CEOs like no other, he's not afraid to talk to your boss and square them up and help them get moving in the right direction. Imagine a conference of 1,000 people in the audience, and out of, that's a lot of people in some circles, right? For some of the people I work with, that's tiny. But coming off of a stage and having one guy seek you out, that's you, Tony Bodo. And if it's 8 years ago, imagine 1,000 people, one guy comes up and it creates a connection that 8 years later, here we are together, sharing some things in a real situation that can serve somebody. And so thanks for letting me be here, Tony. I couldn't imagine being anywhere else tonight, and it's an honor. I thought I'd start, before we get into my background and all that, if you're okay with it, Tony, I thought I'd share with you a little bit about who might be on this call, who might be tuning in tonight.
Okay, perfect.
The avatar, if you will. So the people that traditionally follow me, the people that are chiming in tonight on Facebook Live, on my side of the fence. Now you have a crowd on your side of the fence. So my side of the fence, let me share with you a little bit about who's tuning in right now. We have salespeople, people that are commission driven. We've got leaders, leadership divisions. We've got entrepreneurs, people that own small business. So can you imagine what they're going through right now, right? Salespeople, leadership. I've got real estate agents. I've got brokers. We've got people that come from the vacation industry. So these are the kind of people that we have tuning in. And more important is to understand, what's that personality style like? So here's the challenge for you and I, Tony. Here's the challenge. I'm up for it, and I know you are too, but it's important to know your audience. we have a lot of type A personalities. We've got people that have ADHD. We have people that their attention focus margins are tiny. And so it's our responsibility to keep them engaged. Because the reason we want to keep you engaged isn't so much to have fun tonight, although we're going to have a blast. It's to give you some tools that you can grab onto. And I can't think of a better time where someone from a sales, leadership, real estate, entrepreneur, business owner, I can't think of a better time where someone would be open to grab the tools. So all I ask for you that are out there, because you are our audience, is to stay tuned in, stay locked in. You know, for all we know, you know, the first 10 minutes might not serve you, but the first 20 minutes might not serve you, but it's the one thing that lands at minute 35 and you just don't want to miss it. So those are the personalities. The backstory, the 30,000 foot backstory is, you know, a lot of my friends that are on this that are true friends from Facebook know my upbringing.
Can I pause you for a second here? Because I got to tell you right now, we are rocking it. I'm watching the numbers just keep going up here. We've got 20 people already on. And I don't know, that's active right now, but they've been coming in on and off. So just a quick shout out to a couple of them is Kenton Johnson, Rhonda Frizzell. I apologize if I pronounce your names wrong. Janet Grace. Hey, Janet. Nice to see you here. She's on my side there. Shelley Beal and Jeff Smallwood are just a couple that I see popping up here.
Happy birthday, Jeff Smallwood.
Hey, happy birthday, Jeff.
It was his birthday. Yeah. So, you know, that's the personality style. We're here to grow. We're here to learn. And we're grateful to have you. So if you're willing to learn something new tonight, maybe for those of you that are watching, give us a thumbs up in the, I guess there's a post, right?
Yeah, that's commentary right underneath all the videos.
Give us a thumbs up in the commentary. And in addition to that, if you know somebody who really could use extra support, you know, here you got two guys that are in the coaching industry live. If you've got somebody that could use extra support while you're watching this, if you click on the share button on Facebook, it'll open up to your friends and family. So if you could be so kind to do that, that might help serve somebody else. So a very quick 30,000 foot level overview, Tony, of kind of where I came from. And we'll talk a little bit more about this idea of going from adversity to you know, struggling with adversity and then creating results that are on an outcome that most people would dream of. We'll cover that in a minute, but at the end of the day, I was kind of an average kid. You know, I certainly grew up with some of the challenges that families face. And one of the things that I took to in high school were athletics, sports. And that got me more connected with people. It felt a safe place, let's say. And so I was pretty extraordinary in baseball, and that led to me having a more outgoing personality. And as I was studying engineering in college, evolving as a person, realized that sitting behind a desk working on a CAD computer wasn't my deal. I loved people, and that came through sports. And from there, I followed into one of my best friend's father's footsteps and got into real estate and, you know, struggled for 5 years. You know, for all of you that are entrepreneurs out there, all of you that are business owners, if you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in and struggling, congratulations. You are right
5 years
on
in
track.
and struggling.
You're right on track.
That's right.
And it was in that 6th year living in Seattle, Washington, I created some momentum and really didn't know what I was doing. I just did something long enough where I got unconsciously competent by the habit. And then created an extraordinary career in real estate, selling thousands of homes, closing thousands of transactions through a variety of different things that I ended up taking on opportunity in a beautiful destination called Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. There's certainly a lot of in-betweens in there, and that was an extraordinary life. I was a young empty nester. My wife and I wanted to go live some extraordinary life and live on a beach. And so the resort industry called me, and we headed out to Cabo San Lucas, and we lived out there for 7 years, an extraordinary life. Beautiful homes, being able to go to the beach after work every day. And I had an extraordinary career in the hotel resort industry. And that ultimately led to me being a coach. So that's the short summary of it. And now I coach people around the world through technology. It makes us, gives us the tools available that we can actually serve people all around the world. So there we go.
Nice. And then with something like Facebook Live, and we can get on and reach even more people. So just a quick shout out here to a few others that are coming in here. We've got Leticia Salido, I believe it is. Horatio Hidez, yeah. I believe. Brian Kruger and Sean Perry. And Horatio's from PV. So
yes, he is.
Okay.
He's a heck of a golfer, by the way.
Oh, nice.
I got off the phone with Brian Kruger not long ago. He's an extraordinary real estate agent out in Las Vegas. We just talked about the Las Vegas market. And he happened to have sold a piece of property to one of the new NFL football team players.
Nice.
Of which I have one of the, on the same team, one of the coaches coming and staying with us in a couple weeks. Well, actually in August. Nice. From that team. So that's kind of cool. Small world. So shout out to you there, Brian, and everybody else. So what I thought, Tony, one of the things I was thinking about when we thought about doing this tonight was, I expect that we're going to have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be off the cuff. Nobody wants something so structured. So I want this to be casual and organic. Which means your participation. If you're watching this now and you've got questions, chime in, text in the thing, ask some questions, ask away.
Yeah, but I'm monitoring comments on Facebook here. So if you got a comment, I'm going to bring it onto the show. You got a question, I'll bring it onto the show for you. So absolutely.
Sure. So in addition to having fun and being organic, I want to come to everyone that's tuning in tonight pretty strong. And strong from a place of love, strong from a place of conviction that good times are ahead and that there are tools that we can each grab. And if we use those tools, we can create amazing results. These are things that I've done in certain cycles of my life. So I'm going to probably have less fluff and some more strategic, really great tools to give everybody. And ultimately, what I'd love to do is bring as much value as I can to this call. 1 hour goes by lightning fast in my world, in Tony's world. And so I'd like to bring as much value as we can in such a short period of time. So I guess my disclosure as a coach for me, Tony, I need full disclosure here, baby. I got to make sure that, I'd love to have more friends on Facebook, but I don't need more friends on Facebook. I'd love to have more likes on this feed, but that's not really what I need, but I'd love to have that. What I'd really love is that someone grabs something and does something with it and puts into action the things that we bring so they can create the result that we want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that I do these, the reason I invite people like you on, Chris, is because I know you've got stuff that is immediately applicable right now. You can take it. Anyone that's watching this can take it and do something with it, and they can make their lives better, their business better. And so that's why I'm glad to have you here. And again, if anyone has any questions, anyone wants to throw a comment out there, please do so. You just want to let us know you're there. Let us know you're there. I mean, and I apologize. I am really bad with pronouncing names. So I'm going to spell this one instead because I don't know which one.
We have quite a few global too. So
I know that's
what Tony's experiencing is I have quite a few clients and friends out in other parts of the world. So we've seen some names come in that are quite difficult for most.
Okay. So I'm not sure if it's Berenice, Berenixe.
So this is Berenice.
Berenice. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's awesome. I love that name.
Berenice. Hi,
Berenice.
Berenice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we got Jose Garcia as well. And they popped on here a little while ago. We've got Jerry Christensen.
Gerald, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Leticia. She commented again here.
Letty.
Oh, Shelly wants more about me, I think. I'm not sure there. Oh, no.
Well, Shelly, great lead in. Shelly, did you get my text? No. I love Shelley. So
I think that's what she's asking, but I
we
would
have
take it.
we have to know. So I was going to get there. Shelley, great lead in. Tony, I don't even want to, you guys saw that he's an incredible author. If you haven't read his book yet, it's called Profitability. Great advice for any CEO. And let me be clear. If you're an entrepreneur, there's something that I refer to as self-CEO, right? Being the CEO of yourself. So this book's great for anybody. So you need to go out on Amazon and get it if you've got it on Amazon, Tony. But Profitability.
Yeah, it is on Amazon.
Share with us a little bit for my tribe, Tony. Share with us a little bit about you, what you have going on. I know you've got an incredible new podcast.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about you, Tony.
So if you go to Amazon to check out the book, the cover is new. We got a brand new cover on there.
Oh, great.
And so just to give you a quick insight here, the book is Profitability, as in, seeing the future, the ability to see the future. And we start off the book talking about the priest, the prophet, and the king, because in any organization, you have obviously the CEO or the king, but then you've got those people who want the organization to keep doing things the way they have been, which is the priest, tradition, order, don't change anything. And you've got the prophet who's out there looking to the future, listening to the customer, saying, where do we go from here? So that's kind of the premise behind the book. But it's really there to help people see 3 to 5 years into the future and what to do and how to listen to their customers. So I am a recovering nerd. Some people say I haven't recovered yet. So, I'm still in the process. I'm addicted to numbers and data. I've built the analytics systems, marketing analytics and that for direct marketing companies, for hospitality companies. I've been in the hotel industry, resort industry, just like you. I actually ran analytics and customer experience for Gaylord Hotels, which is now run by Marriott. That was the pre-Marriott days. And for the last 11 years now, I had to kind of do the math in my head here. 11 years now, I've been running a consulting company in the area of customer experience. And I've worked at some of the properties out of Mexico, as an example, in Puerto Vallarta and a couple of the other locations there. But we do customer experience work in a lot of different ways, but I truly say I study human experience. So I've got the coaching elements, just like you, Chris. I dive into any way in which we experience our lives, and I try to understand why we experience them that way and how we can have a better experience of life itself. And as I was sharing earlier today with someone, I'm passionate about it because if you understand that the moments we have in this life there's such potential in any given moment that we can make one decision, and that decision has the power to alter the trajectory of human history. One decision, one moment. And that's what makes me passionate about this. And so I have this platform. I have thousands of people following me. And so I said back in March, Nashville got hit with a tornado, and I start getting on and doing these podcasts, broadcasts myself. And I said, wait, I got a bunch of really smart people in my tribe. So let me bring them on here and let's see what kind of wisdom they can pull out, because I learn something every time I'm on here. So that's a little bit about me. Back to you, Chris.
That's awesome. You did a really, really great video on Facebook Live with David Norris. For those of you that don't know David Norris, David comes from leading banks. I guess much more than that, a much more broad scope. But one of the things he did really well was to lead several banks in the banking institutions and how do they create better results. And he was an executive at a bank that had extraordinary numbers, and that led to him having a platform of coaching as well. But he said something that you and him were talking the other day, and I was tuned in on Facebook Live, and he was talking about an NBA coach that has 3 types of players. So for those of you that are watching this right now, I want you to put yourself in the shoes of which player suits you best. So as I share this with you, I want you to think about and maybe share in the feed, which player represents you. So think about this. An NBA team, a coach said this, I'm not sure which coach, but an NBA team has 3 types of players. The first type of player is the mass, the average good player. Now you don't get to the end. So think about just the level of performance at the NBA level. It's the best of the best, which tends to be somebody who Tony loves to work with. So 3 types of players in the best of the best. the average, the group of the herd, right? The mass. And these guys, rookies that just signed up, veterans that have been around a while maybe, but their numbers aren't at peak performance level, but they're good enough to stay on the team. Sometimes backup players. So in a lot of times, this represents that group of the mass on an NBA basketball team. That group doesn't want to be coached. Think about that. Even an NBA coach realizes that. And then you've got a second group on the team. And that group are the really good players. These are the guys that stand out. They're your starting lineup. Maybe one or two guys that play roles behind them. But they're really your real good players. Much smaller group than the mass. These guys love to be coached. They're thriving to be coached. They know that they're really good and there's a whole nother level. So they're seeking coaching. They're asking questions. They're leaning in. They're paying attention. They're practicing hard. I love that group. And then there's the champions, Tony. The champions. I said I wanted to come at you strong today, everybody. And somebody on this call would either recognize they are a champion or they are a champion in the making. Now, if that isn't your deal, that's okay. This isn't a judgment call. This comes from an NBA coach. But this third type of person, the champion, you know what they want? They don't want coaching. They want the truth. When David Norris said that the other day, Tony, I was like, oh my God.
I remember you commented on it. You were like, the truth. Yeah, you were all over that. Right? Now if you think about people in spheres of influence, for a lot of the leaders that are going to be on this call, it's hard to tell the truth to everybody. Yeah.
Right? If you tell the truth to that guy that is in the mass, he'll just shut you down. And, the one that wants to be coached, that next good group, they may or may not be receptive based off of their emotional state that day. Did they win the game? Well, maybe now they'll pay attention. Or if they lost a game, maybe they'll be bitter. But to find that champion where truth is what divides the difference. So if you're bold enough on this call with no judgment, are you with the mass? Are you really good? Or would you like to be a champion? So put mass, good, or champion in the notes. So not to identify you, not to point anybody out, but this is important. Right? And I think if I come from a background of producing results, a lot of misconceptions of coaching. They think, and with my personality, I happen to have an amicable personality. I tend to hope to believe people like me. I smile a lot. I care deeply about people. I'm a man of faith. I love on people when I can love on them. But there's a line that crosses when someone asks me to become their coach, because I love them enough to tell them the truth. And I hold an image, Tony, this might be to some fault, that everyone that coaches with me has a champion in them. And so I've got to teach to that higher denominator. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. And it's interesting, the going back to that example, because when I work with companies, with CEOs, one of the things that I find over and over again is the same thing. I've never heard it described that way until David Norris did it. And there's a lot of companies out there that are amongst the best, so I'm in the customer experience world, and they're already, I work with 4- and 5-star hotels as an example, to put it in the context of some of the people that are on this call. That's the type of companies I work with. They're already in the top tiers of customer experience, or they're headed there. They know they're on the path, on that trajectory. But there's a lot of them that don't want the truth. They're in the average of the best, and that's where they want to be. They don't seek it out. They don't even hire me because we have a conversation and I realize they're not a good fit. They realize it's not a good fit. Then you do have those who they want some coaching. They really do. But then there's the rare few that really are the champions. And when you work with a champion, it's amazing to see that. You know, and can I give an example
Please.
Yeah. So when I worked at Gaylord, this goes back to 2006 or 7, that time frame. I was over the analytics, and they said, hey, we've got these massive hotels, 2,000, 3,000 rooms. They've got 600,000 square feet of meeting space. So the type of people that might be selling on this call, they might be, you know, an event salesperson like that, selling big conferences. And the leadership came to me and said, listen, we have no idea how to yield both the space and the rooms, how to get the most revenue out of these buildings. What can you do for us? And so I went at it. It took me 6 months to do the analysis. But at the end of the analysis, I came back with my conclusions and said, here's what we can do. Well, they finally accepted. It took me about 6 months to get them to believe me. And it was, you know, quite the challenge there. But once they accepted it, we were building the Gaylord National right outside of Washington, D.C., 1,500 rooms, 400,000 square feet. And I came to the leadership of the company, the CEO and his team, and I said, the way we're building this hotel, we will not get the results that are on the pro forma. We will not get the occupancy. We will not get the revenues. And I laid out, here's why, because we got too much of this, too little of that, not enough here, not enough there. And I made a suggestion. Here's my recommendations how to change it. They went back. There was obviously like, we got to prove that this is true. There was pushback. They eventually made the decision, to their credit. As a result, they invested. The building, the hole was dug. The foundations were poured. They looked at the architect, said, here's what we can do. They invested, I think, about $200 million into a project that was already $750 or $800 million. So we hit close to that $1 billion mark. They invested that, and they added 500 rooms to the property. Now, you guys I can't officially publicly say some of the numbers, but do the math on 500 rooms in a 4.5-star hotel. And they now could fill those rooms up, if they wanted to, 95% consistently, night over night over night. So it was worth tens of millions of dollars a year to make that decision. They got their payback without a problem. And so, but that's an example. Like when I work with teams, I want a CEO who's going to be able to say, okay, we're going to invest $250 million more on a hotel we've already put $750 million in, that's in the ground and rising up. Those are the type of champions you want to work with. You know,
that's right.
They can see the truth, they know the truth, and they, as much as they may push back to make sure that it's true, they eventually say yes.
That's amazing. So let me ask you a question, Tony. Why? So I'm going to come back to the reason of truth in a minute, but why do you think it's so hard for all of us to face the truth, right? I think truth is it's not easy, right? Especially, you know, let's take this dynamic of the pandemic, right? And social things going on and, you know, all this stuff going on right now. And, you know, when it comes to our own personal performance, you know, we have people on this call, Tony, haven't worked in months.
Yeah.
I have people, shut them down cold turkey, and they're just going back to work this week. You know, and I've got people that are executing this call who are going lean. They never went out of business, but they're thinking smarter, and so they're making cuts, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, as a coach, you know, when it comes to the individual, the person that you're coaching, you know, why is it so hard for us to sometimes come to truth? Why do you think that is? Do you have an answer to that? I don't know if we hadn't talked about
We hadn't talked about that, no, but I do have an answer. And so this is something you guys can draw on. If you got a piece of paper in front of you, you know, I don't care if it's a napkin, whatever it is, I'll describe this. You can draw it out. Draw a circle on that paper and then put an X in the middle of it. So it's kind of like you got 4 pieces of pie. Okay. And I use this a lot when I'm teaching from a customer experience perspective, because this comes directly out of the psychology research. Now, at the bottom piece of that pie, so you've got a circle with an X, the bottom piece of that pie, this is all related to your self-image, is how you see yourself. The bottom section is who you believe you are in a given moment. It's right now. This is what I believe I'm in, the context. And we all know that changes from moment to moment, from context to context, right? In the top segment, or the top piece of pie, that's who you aspire to be. So if you're not thinking about who you are in this moment, you might be thinking about, this is who I want to be. I want to be like Chris. I want to be like Tony. I want to be like Aldo or Perla or Shelly or David. You know, you want to be like one of those people, right? Or you might have your own aspirations. I want to be a person that travels the world, right? That's your that's your aspirational self-image. Then on the left-hand side of the pie, that piece is, it is your, who you think or who you believe others people think you are, who you believe other people think you are. And on the right-hand side is who you want them to believe you are.
Mm.
So the left-hand side is your perspective of their perspective, but of course you can't get in their head. It's just you making this crap up,
Right.
which is where a lot of us get stuck. On the right-hand side is where, you know, you're like, gosh, this is what I really want them to think about, which is why I buy the car, why I do X, why I do Y, why I say Z. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. And so the reason I put this is self-image. You are always in one or maybe two of these at any given point in time. You're either aspirational or you're facing the moment. And then you're either looking at yourself or you're looking at how other people look at you. And if you can't accept the truth, if you're not looking at the center of that circle, if you're focused on worrying about what other people think of you, what they might think of you, where you want to be rather than where you are right now, the closer you get to that center where all four of these pieces of pie come together. So you're being in this moment who you aspire to be, and you believe other people see you as you want them to see you. If you can bring all four pieces together, you're going to hear the truth. Even if it's uncomfortable, you're going to hear the truth, because that is the perfect point of self-image.
Wow, Tony, I'm glad I asked the question. You know, and what you and I know, and for a lot of the people that are tuned in that have followed either your work or my work, is the idea that, you know, if in the nutshell, what you answered in with that beautiful, I mapped it out on my piece of paper here, right? I'm taking my notes. I got Tony Bodo on the line.
Nice.
You don't mess around when you got Tony Bodo, you take notes. So, you know, what I love about it is that we have taught for years, and it's because it's work that's way above and beyond, you know, our own invention. This has been around for a long time, but our results are a direct relationship to self-image.
Mm-hmm.
So everything you're talking about has, you know, this idea of truth tied to self-image, and every book that's ever really been written on the way we think and how we are more effective has a direct relationship to self-image.
Absolutely. And the powerful thing, if you understand this model, everyone who is in sales, they've got to understand where their lead, their prospect is right now. Are they thinking about themselves? Are they thinking about themselves aspirationally? Are they thinking about what other people are going to think? Or are they thinking about how they want them to think? If you nail that, you will make the sale, because you're speaking about who they want to be or who they are being right now. Game's over.
Great.
As long as they have the money, the game's over.
That's right. So let's get back to truth.
Absolutely.
So, you know, as a coach, you know, if I think about this coach that coaches the NBA, and he's got a whole team he's going to coach to, right? He's got a message he's got to give. He can't always necessarily them all. Like tonight, I don't have the luxury of separating everybody. And everybody's self-identifying, either like the mass, I'm either somebody who's really good or I'm a champion, right? So it's interesting to think about a coach that talks to the group, the whole group. You know, there's a dilemma, because if he tells the truth or gets people to start thinking about the truth, sometimes that affects us in a way that can be shocking. So, you know, I have empathy. You know, on this call, there are people that haven't generated income in a while. I feel for you. I have personal friends that are losing their restaurant, right? So this isn't a time to be casual. We can be light tonight, but we can also hold a deep respect for those who are really struggling and who put themselves, have their situation really upended, where, you know, I just want you to know, if you're on this call, I'm listening and I've heard you, and I have deep empathy. And I want to talk a little bit about this idea of truth. You know, one of the things that I will tell everyone on this call, this is going to be a hard pill to chew. So hopefully I've kind of gradually worked up to it, right? In sales, I've learned to, you know, you really can't sell anything until you know your audience. Now, I'm not selling anything, but I want to communicate a message, and I you know, my desire would be that you receive it. And it's the idea that through this adversity right now, right in this thing right now, that there's something so powerful for you in your future. And it's hard to see that when you're right in it, right, Tony? When it's hard to see the fog on the lens when we're hearing stuff on the media and we lost our job or we're trying to pay the bills. You know, I don't know if you've ever smashed your fingers with a hammer or ran over. I've dropped a brick on my foot before. You know, if you're in big pain, all your other sensories are clouded. You might get ringing in the ear. I smashed my foot so bad once doing a construction job that I couldn't hear anything for a few minutes, almost like there was a blast, even though it was on my foot. There was no noise, but my state of my body was in such shock, I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
And then I got tunnel vision. I couldn't see. I couldn't even, and I stumbled around almost like I was deaf and blind until one of the other workers found me. I think for some of us on this call, our perceptions of our senses have been massively impacted, like a slam of a hammer right on our foot. So it's hard to see what I'm going to say for some of you, is my point. This isn't going to be easy to hear for some people because of the fog, the noise that could still be ringing in your ears. So I'm going to do this as delicately as I can, but as boldly as I can, is that even though that we're in this situation, there's something so powerful that's going to happen in your life because of this. That's not metaphorical jargon of, grandeur. That's a fact. If you don't mind, Tony, you asked about my background and this idea of the book I'm writing called From Adversity to Accomplishment. I'd like to share with you a little bit about a time in my life that I call the perfect storm.
Please do, because I think for many people, this is that perfect storm. Knowing just a little bit, I don't even know the story completely. I just know a hint of the story. But I can tell you that I know this is the perfect storm for a lot of people because like you, I've spent the last, what has it been, about 3 months now. And in that time, any clients that I've had a lot of clients that have had to stop projects, but it's been all about how do we keep our business going forward? How do we win today? Not even how do we win this year? How do we win today? And some of them have had to pull the plug. And it's,
right.
You're watching it. I've had clients. I just had a client last week actually that say, I don't know if we can go forward anymore. And I'm
right.
Like, what do you do?
That's right.
Put all this time in, and so yeah, it's a challenge. So yes, please let's talk about this. Let's go deeper into this.
So, I'm going to share this not really to embellish anything about me. What the purpose would be is that it's a part of my journey, and it's a way that maybe you can relate to something today for you. When the noise might be so loud and the flash might be so bright that your senses, you feel off balance. And, so I go to Seattle, have an extraordinary real estate career. One of the top selling real estate agents in all of King County, maybe in the top 5 in King County, producing millions and millions of dollars of volume a year, tens of millions in some years. And I had it going good. I was young. I was in my mid-20s, Tony. Imagine that. 20-year-old making, big 6-figure incomes. I had a gorgeous home at 26 years old, drove an S-Class Mercedes, had it parked in the garage, take these extraordinary vacations, had the love of my life. For all intents and purposes, that was the dream life for so many people, right? If they had Facebook back then, I would have been really cool, you know what I mean? And back then I liked material things, right? So I'm plugging along in real estate and I've got all these great things going on. And in 1 month, in 2020, in 2000, this is almost to the date. I just looked this up. This is in March of 2000. In 1 month, I had 4 things happen to me. A guy that was rocking it. I'd figured some stuff out. I failed my way forward to get to that place. And then I had a catastrophe, what felt like a catastrophe. I call it the perfect storm. Except the perfect storm in the movie, they only had 3 things go wrong. I had 4. So it's the perfect storm. How do you like that? So in 1 month, through a variety of reasons, we won't have time to get in the backstory, I was fired from an executive job working in real estate. I lost a relationship that I was deeply in love with after 3 years. I lost my entire financial nest egg in the stock market. In year 2000 was when the tech bubble burst. And to top that off, this is in 1 month, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Wow.
You know, I get emotionally still thinking about that. And I picture the young man now that, you know, looking back, that went through that. And when I talk about these things, again, it's not about whoa, Chris, you know, I know these rags to riches stories. It's not my point. My point is, you know, can you relate to some of that to you now? So for me, going back there, you know, that was painful. I think about any one of those things could cripple somebody, let alone 4 of them in 1 month. So what happened through that, you know, so the reason I know that story, Tony, is because I've learned to coach around the idea of, you know, failure becoming some of our greatest assets in life. Right. And I remember going on a stage once at 1,000 people, they introduced my name. I'm sitting off stage and they're like, they start talking about the guy that's going to talk next. They start talking about the accolades. And, you know, I always do a 1-minute mindset where I kind of close my eyes and meditate so I can connect with the audience and overcome stage fright, all that stuff. And, you know, I usually close my eyes. I get myself in a rhythmic motion of rocking back and forth, focusing on how I'm going to connect with the audience and what I'm going to say. And in kind of a third voice, I hear them talking about the guy they're going to introduce. And I was so in my zone, I started hearing all these good things. And I'm like, this guy's going to be amazing. And then I came out of it. I'm like, they're talking about me. And they're like, Chris Shryack. So, well, what's funny about that, I go out on the stage. I was scripted. I had planned everything to talk about that was cool about me and what I can teach these people. You evolve, right? You'll learn. I was young. And as a new coach. And I go on stage and basically everything I thought I was going to talk about went blank. And I said, you know, all that stuff that guy just said, that's amazing. And none of that is why you want me to say hello. Because it's not those successes that are going to serve anybody. It's the failure. Let me start there. And I told that story for the first time in my life, Tony.
Wow.
In front of 1,000 people in California. And here's what's wild about it. Like, it gives me chills. It just comes out, right? And I think there was a little part of me going, Chris, what are you doing? Are you kidding me? You're not inspiring people. And I tell this story and the audience erupts. And to this day, I don't think I've ever had a more powerful talk live, because it was a one-time deal. Mm-hmm. And the people that it impacted, you see, people can relate sometimes more to your struggle than they can your success. And I didn't know that, right? That was one of these boxes on self-image. I thought all I'd do is tell them how cool I was, right? I'll just tell you how good I am. And you know, when you're young as a coach, that's what you do. Mm-hmm. And wisdom kicks in and some great mentorship. And, you know, I evolved. And that day exposed me to something, that the truth matters, and being vulnerable and sharing with people, you know, the struggle. So, you know, I go back to that time, complete grieving period. Some of you on this call have a grieving period through coronavirus. Your job just isn't the same anymore.
Yeah.
You want to go back to, and you're going through grieving. You might have lost the company already, or you're gonna. And that, you can't go back to work yet. You're grieving what it used to be. And I went into grieving for about 30 days. It was I went into a deep depression. And fortunately, I had a few tools that helped me cope with that. Nonetheless, I'm driving down I-5 in Seattle, dark, rainy night, Tony. Rain's coming down. My hands, I can see my hands on the steering wheel. And there was a moment after about 30 days where I decided I've got to grow up and do something different and quit, blaming everything. And I can't find that moment for everybody. You have that moment in this coronavirus. I don't know when it's going to come. I pray that it comes, because if it doesn't come, it's going to create perpetual things in your life that you don't really understand the benefit of. For me, it came in a flash. I see this sign like on the windshield of my car, not physically, but I could see it. I could see it like in neon. And it came by asking this question. And the question was, what responsibility did I have to do with this? Or what could I have done to not have this be such a crisis in my life? So we talked about truth, and I think until you start asking those questions, all of us, what could I have done better? Well, you don't understand, Chris. It was a thing. It came from there, and it created this, and they shut that down. There's a truth that, maybe we should have had a backup plan, right? We've all talked about and heard from our parents or some mentor, save for a rainy day, have an emergency fund. And those truths are hard to grasp. Some of us aren't there yet. And so I don't want to go too deep into that. So I'm asking this question. I'm asking, what did I have to do with this? I start thinking about it. And I thought about the job that I quit showing up at 4 a.m, an hour before everybody else. I'd quit doing that, Tony. And that I wouldn't go to every meeting with enthusiasm. I'd show up, but I would show up for the establishment, the leadership, not for myself. And I thought about the relationship after 3 years that I'd lost. In that relationship, I quit nurturing, right? I quit feeding it. And I thought about the stock market and how I lost my entire life's fortune at the time, remembering one of my golden rules that I learned from one of my mentors that I neglected, which is you never put all your eggs in one basket. I'd put all my eggs in one basket. And my mom, where she lived through that bout of cancer, but I didn't probably cause the cancer, but I started asking even, what's my role here? You know what it told me, like in this weird epiphany, in asking the right question, what was my deal in this, came an answer of, Chris, you haven't been around her for a while. You're a busy professional. You know, where's that relationship? How important is it? And so the one word that came to me was complacency. And Tony, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And so as we talk about truth today, I believe all of us have a role around complacency regarding coronavirus.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We could have saved more money. We could have educated ourselves in case our current field collapsed. We could have bought less toys. We could have been smarter at business and worked harder while it was good. Right? So these are some of the truths, right? I probably lost half of our crowd right there.
Actually, Chris, I want to tell you, it's blowing up right now. We've got more people coming on, and we've got all kinds of emoticons being hit right now. This hits home for a lot of people.
Well, you know, it's so I told you guys this would be light and fun, right? And it will be. But why did that affect the 1,000 crowd audience that night? Because damn it, we've all been there.
Yeah.
And here's what I know about everyone on this call. We're all here right now. Looks different. Doesn't have the same titles that I experienced in 2000. But it can have the same effect, that concussion effect. So I hope to dust off some of the concussion and, ask ourselves, be truthful. I want to speak truth as a coach. I'm here for you to get results. I want to understand, where was the complicit part of us in this? And, what can we learn from it? So here's the shining silver liner. Here's the best part. The best part, Tony, for all of us, is that when we seek that out, we learn and grow.
Yep.
So this is, I said this earlier, this might be the single greatest thing that ever happens to you. I'm going to say that again. It's hard when it's still feels like a concussion mode. Still raw, but I want everyone to hear me. This is not hyperbole. This isn't woo-woo motivate guy talk. This is the real deal from experience. The greatest thing in your life, I believe, can come from this. Period. So that happens in 2000. I see the word complacency. Tony, as God is my witness, I saw the sign. I asked these questions. I vowed that night in my Mercedes to never be complacent again. And that was in 2000. The pain was like, I'm sorry, but this is child's play compared to how I felt then. I was also younger. I also didn't have the tools I have today, right? Yeah. I didn't have the mentors in my life. And I was learning the tough way. So I made this decision to not be complacent. Now, do I have complacent moments? To be sure, I'm human. But that I've never forgot. And so what happened is when we hit 2008 and 9, I got into the travel industry. I wanted to move to Mexico. I moved down there, the market collapses. Boom. And guess what, Tony? Everyone in the industry said, you better leave, Chris. I thought about bringing this up a few weeks ago, but it wouldn't have been pertinent because it's not apples to apples. In this, they literally pulled the pin and people can't go to work. At least in 2008-9, you could go to work. So it's a little different. But what's going to happen in the next month, that industry is going to look very, very similar to 2008-9. And let me tell you how to win in that market. That market requires an extra effort in the way you think, right? So I entered that market not knowing anything about the industry. I was and everyone was failing. But because of what happened in 2000, remember I said there's something good about this for people long term? In 2000, I found the reason, which helped me support structure around me with mentorship in 2008-9 to crush the results, dominate the space. One of the top performers in a region where the best of the best were failing. And I say that not to toot my own horn. I say that because that wouldn't happen without what happened in 2000.
Right.
And here we are, coronavirus, and I certainly feel it, but I've seen something like this before. Does that make sense? Have you, in your life, have you been through crisis, can look back and go, oh, now I know why that was there? I mean, you've had an experience like that, right?
Just a couple, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's two things that strike me. One, just real quickly on my experience there is, I've been through a couple things like that, but I would say 2007 was kind of the awakening moment for me. And a lot of things started to move in my life. And that's actually when I started with personal development. I had no idea what the word was before that. I read Jack Canfield's Success Principles book, and that got me started. And then, I met some of the people that we know in 2008 and start going down that path. Well, in 2008 and into 2009, the stress of my job, which I love my job, but the stress of my job was such that I once described it to a mentor that we both share as it felt like when I walked into the office, I had to leave my soul at the door.
Oh,
Yeah. And it was like, I loved the company. I loved what they were doing, but it tore me apart to be there because I saw where they were headed. This was in the financial crisis. I saw what all the values that were stated and where they were heading versus what they had said. And there came a point where it was so bad that I developed these allergies. And I'd be eating a meal and I would go into anaphylactic shock, which is like my heart would start to slow down. My breathing, my breathing would stop. I mean, this was happening 3 to 4 times a week. And it was February. I don't know the exact date, but it was like the first week of February in 2009. And it was been progressing, getting worse. I headed to visit my in-laws, and it was my wife and my 2 daughters. They were, I think, this point, probably 3 and 5. They were really young at the time, and they're sleeping on the pull-out sofa in the hotel room that we had, the little room we had. My wife and I are sleeping in the bed, and I wake up because something's wrong, and I wake up in the middle of anaphylactic shock, not understanding why. I didn't touch anything I was allergic to, as far as I was aware of. Barely can move. I get the Benadryl, which is sitting on my nightstand. That's how I slept, with Benadryl on my nightstand, right? I mean, that tells you where it was at. My EpiPen was in the luggage. I pop Benadryl, and I'm starting to go unconscious. I can't even wake my wife up, and I don't know if I'm going to wake up in the morning. And as I kind of fade out into that blackness, I'm looking across, and I can feel the tear coming down my cheek. And I look across, and I'm like, one more moment with my girls is all I want. That's all I want. And I vowed, if I wake up, I will not stay in corporate America. A week later, by the time I got back, because I had done some traveling for work and that kind of stuff, I got back and I was taken out for breakfast. And they said, you either accept this promotion.
Uh-oh. The big test.
Exactly. Or we're going to have to let you go. And
a crossroads.
Yeah. And I'm looking at the table as this VP is across the table from me. I'm looking at this table, and I literally see pawns moving like a chessboard. And I realize they think I'm a pawn. And I just start laughing, and the VP thinks I've gone like I've lost it. And I'm like, okay, I'm done.
Wow.
And this was February of 2009. So put that in perspective. We're in the middle of the financial crisis, and I'm like, I'm in the I was just like, I'm done. I'm moving on. I started my business the next day. Like I went to file the paperwork and all that, and the company didn't know what to do though, because they didn't expect me to say that. So it took them 90 days to figure out, can we sever him? How do we sever him? What can we do? In the process, I won't get into the full story. In the process, they tried to fire me because I started my company and didn't inform them that I had done the paperwork for the company. And they tried to get away without paying me my severance package. I mean, the story goes on and on, but all of that to say, that was a huge moment for me that continued throughout 2009 to 2010, because that whole first year of my business from May to May was, I was like not finding clients. When I found them, they didn't pay. When they didn't pay, it was like one thing after the other. And I got to the point of almost declaring personal bankruptcy. I was out hunting for jobs, actually, online hunting for jobs on May 1st when the rain started falling in Nashville. Within 36 hours, we had 13 inches of rain. I left my house Sunday evening at 7 p.m., not knowing if I'd ever come back because it was flooding. And so you talk about a year or 15 months from February to May. And that whole time was one of those, it's like yours was compressed, which I probably couldn't have handled yours, which is why I got mine over a long period of time, because I'm stubborn.
Yeah, it's miraculous how things work out for the right
exactly.
of us, right?
Anyway, so fast forward about a month after that all happened, and I started getting back on my feet again. I landed a contract that I could not have possibly imagined, and that took me through some pretty amazing growth after that. That was kind of one of those moments for me, you know. So I mean, we all have these moments in our lives. We've all got them. If we don't accept it, this is kind of my conclusion.
Yes.
If I don't accept it and embrace it and really dig for the gold that's there, and I don't say that lightly, if you don't dig for the gold that's there, the truth, yes, thank you, then it will come back again, and it's going to hurt worse the next time. And this was kind of the second thing that strikes me, Chris, is with your story, a little behavioral economics lesson here.
Great.
As we only, if you think about all the human senses and all the human emotions, we only sense that which is different from our expectation. So in this moment, I expect to feel a specific way. You know, if you tell a joke and I wasn't expecting it, that's what makes me laugh and makes me feel better, right? It's slightly elevated. If you tell me something that I wasn't expecting that's unpleasant, I kind of feel down. Well, if you can imagine for a moment, you imagine something positive. Let's say it's a +1, right? So you go a little bit to the positive. Or if you imagine something equally, let's say a -1. What happens is the +1, you feel +1 good. The -1 actually is about twice as bad.
Ooh, so it's not 1 for 1.
It's not 1 for 1. It's actually 1 for 2. So
right.
And the example I use, I do this all the time when I'm you know, speaking to large audiences. I'll say, okay, now let's imagine for a moment you're walking down the street and you see a $100 bill laying on the street, right? No one's around. There's no way to give it back to anyone. So you bend down, you pick it up. It's your $100 bill. There's no one to give it to. There's no one to return it to. So you're like, okay, you got a $100 bill. I want you guys to imagine right now that you've got a $100 bill in your hand. You just picked up off the street. It's yours. What are you gonna do with that? What are some of you may even throw it in the chat box here. What would you do with that $100 bill? You know, I can think of, I'd probably go out to dinner, probably, you know, do a couple things I want to do, maybe buy a book or something because I'm an avid reader, right?
Sure.
I start thinking about those things. All of us do. It's natural. We start to put a plan of action out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's imagine for a moment, I take that $100 bill away from you. Taking it away. You lose it. Not there anymore, right? Now, if I've taken that $100 bill away from you, how do you feel now? Exactly. And when I actually do this in you know, large audiences, you feel people, they actually groan. They're like, no. They'll yell out because they literally are feeling it in the moment. And I said, let's observe this for a second. You feel worse now than you did when you got before you had the money.
Yeah.
And there's no change to your situation. In addition, it's all imagined. We played with your imagination. There was no $100 bill in your hand. I didn't take anything away. Don't be angry at me, but they feel it. And so I say that because if you look at your careers, everyone on this call right now, you look at your careers, you've inched it up every day, putting the time in. You've had success, right? Some good days, some bad days, but you've had these successes. You got to where you were. All of a sudden, it's gone. Whether you just went home and couldn't come back or whether it's gone, right?
Or it's recalculated. It's not the same.
Exactly. So you had all these small wins, which none of them ever felt over the moon. They were just a lot of small wins. And all of a sudden, everything you've won is pulled away from you. So imagine it would be like walking down the street every day and picking up a $1 bill, right? Ooh. And then I come and take the $100 bill away from you. That's what just happened to us.
For all intents and purposes, that's worse feeling.
Exactly. And so it's not just the $1 bill being lost or the $100 being, it's like 100 times that being lost. So the negative feeling is so intense right now because we've lost so much that we gained in little increments over time and had little good feeling. Now we just lost a lot. So I say that to empathize with you and say, I understand where it is because like Chris, you've been there in your way. I've been there in my way. A lot of people are there right now in their own ways.
So why don't we do this, Tony? You know, Tony and I put this together organically by design. We wanted to just roll with each other and talk about a couple things. Why don't we give them a couple tools? You know, people, so, you know, first off, if you're just joining us and you're on the live version of this, click on the share button right now because somebody, you know, just needs to hear this message and we want to put a bigger net over them to maybe help somebody. So click on the share button. I'd like to give these, you know, everyone some tools. Maybe we'll go back and forth, give 2 or 3 things that are, you know, you talked about it that, you know, we can be in this quagmire of feeling. We can understand the theoretical term of what Chris said and that yes, one day this is I get that, but right now it stings and I need something. I need a little help, so let me give one, Tony, and then maybe you give one. And that way we close this up on a pretty square amount of time. And if any of this resonates with you guys, let us know. Let us know if,
I want to give a shout out. I've got a lot of people bouncing here, and I'm trying to scroll through here. I accidentally kicked Jose Garcia off, so I want to apologize. I apologize, Jose. Please go back and watch the replay. My bad.
Nice.
I've never done that before. I mean, I'm there.
Yeah,
Sorry
we go.
about that.
Full disclosure.
That's right.
If he's a champion, he'll come back. No, I won't hold him to that standard. So here's the reality. I want one more truth, and then I'm going to give you some answers, right? We're here to give you some solutions. We can't fix it all in one call. We can't fix it all in 1 hour with Tony and Chris. But what we can do is give you some tools to maybe reduce the amount of fog, reduce that feeling of that concussion. So I'm pretty convinced everyone's going to start going back to work. If you haven't been back to work yet, you're going to be. If you can salvage that business, it's going to happen now. I put myself in my shoes in 2008 and 9, which the ultimate reason of why I'm in front of you as a coach, Tony, is what I did in 2008 and 9 was I tipped the table up and upended a failing situation and created extraordinary results. And I did that. I wouldn't have been able to do that without what happened in 2000. So that set me up for greatness. And then in that greatness got me noticed. And then people started asking for help. So a lot of people say, how'd you get into coaching? That's how. Go perform at a really high level and people are going to start asking you, how'd you do that? And it wasn't a fluke. It happened year after year after year in a crisis. What's cool is I am trained a machine in these type of markets. This is where I thrive because I know how to think. And I know that working with mentors helps, and I've got mentors in my life. So I'm not navigating it alone. But I will give you a couple things. Well, I'll give you one, and then Tony will give you one. And, one of them is when you do go back to work. Here's, salespeople, entrepreneurs, small business owners, leadership. You have lost the luxury of being complacent anymore. Meaning, it's time to roll your sleeves up and go to work hard and smart. Because there's going to be fewer opportunities in the short term. Most teams don't need as many people as they needed 6 months ago. And that means in your own circle, whoever's on this call, you work in groups probably, and you work with peers, and there's going to be attrition. I said this on my little intro that the light switch isn't just going to come back on Monday. Now that might say, wave the white flag that says you can go to work, but now you got to go to really work. For those of us that have been complacent. So let me give you a tool that I used 2008-9. It was extremely competitive. We were working on about a 20% of flow in sales. So for every, what was 100% of customers a month ago, almost overnight became 20% of what we had. And so they only used the best of the best. So you got to be highly competitive to a degree that there is no competition. So I'm going to give you one tool that helped me do that. It's a mindset tool, but it's proven. It works. I coach on it. I give it. And that tool is called an only practice. Now, are you sensitive, Tony? We're at 6 minutes and 9 seconds. Is that all right? Or no, we're not at 6 hours. What are we at? We're at one. I'm sorry, it's at 6:09. We're at on Pacific time. We're at 1 hour and 9 minutes. Can I give a few more?
Yeah, you know what, Chris, I'm good to go. If this is good, people are getting value out of this
stuff here.
Let's just go. Let's just keep going.
All right, so we'll summarize this pretty quick, but this is something I have called only practices. Now, so write down, if you don't have a journal yet, and you watch one of these things, the next time you watch Tony and I, you want to get something to take some notes on. Grab a pen and pad, and I don't care if you have to write on your sister's arm. Grab a pen and pad. Grab something to write on. And so write the words only practices. Only practices. This is one of those cutting edge champion moves that is non-competitive. It's a level above competition. And that's what I'm suggesting so many people that are on this call have to live into. If you're going to stay in your industry, or if you're going to go open up your own industry, or if you're going to go apply for a new job that already have people that are doing that job, we got to think outside the box. So most of you are familiar with the term best practices. Tony, are you familiar with the term best practices?
Absolutely.
Share with some, give an example of a best practice of one of the companies that you might work with.
Well, this isn't a company I work with, but I'll use in the quick service restaurant industry. You know, Chick-fil-A is well known. Yeah. So one of their best practices is to say hello and thank you, and that ranks them way up there. That's one of their best practices they train everyone for.
Nice. So a best practice, if you guys don't know, thanks, Tony. If you don't know what a best practice is, it's either a written or a non-written agreement, traditionally between a group. In many cases, we're talking about an organization, and it's communicated in a way that we're all on the same page, that we're going to abide. Whether it's written or not is another thing, may or may not be written, but we're all going to do things a certain way to create an effect, to have a result. And so that's traditionally called a best practice, whether it be Denny's, Chick-fil-A, Hilton hotels. Many organizations, maybe some of the organizations you work for, have best practices. I'll give you another example. I like to stay at a company called the Ritz-Carlton. I am blessed to be able to go there periodically. And when I go there, I work on my goals and vision. It's really a me time thing, sacred. Yes, it's fancy and spectacular and they treat you great, but you know, I think it's a great time for me to reset when I go there. And one of their best practice, first time I stayed there, I'm like, wow, this is nice, right? Old school. Ritz-Carlton's got that old kind of mystique to it if you go to the right one. And I walked in, and the first time I did this, it kind of freaked me out. I asked one of the people walking in the hall, they had a shirt on. I knew they worked there. I asked them where the restaurant was, a specific restaurant. And one of their company best practices that I learned that day is they do not point. It's down there to the left. They're not allowed to do that. No matter what they're doing, if you get the executive, the vice president of Ritz-Carlton, and you're in the hallway, you go, where's the gym? One of the things he's trained to do as a tribe is to walk you to where that facility is at all cost. So that's called a company best practice. In your industry, there are a lot of unspoken best practices. You have a policy that if you show up late, in many of cases, you're going to have something happen. Or you have to attend a certain meeting every Tuesday. That could be a best practice. A best practice might be that you have a dress code. And on Fridays, you can come Goofy Friday and wear your jeans and t-shirt and flip-flop, whatever. But you probably work around a company that has best practices. Many of us, they're not written, but they're expected. Okay. In 2008 and 2009, in the sales industry I was in, which was in the resort industry, what I did to be better than champion was I looked at what all of the experienced top producers in my field were doing as best practices. I looked at how they walked, how they talked. I looked at who they mentored with. I looked at how they treated their clients. Now, rest assured, the best of the best in 2008-9 were still failing. So grabbing onto what they had was a start, but I didn't want to produce those failing results. So I came up with this idea, and might have been with one of my mentors. I'm not sure where the idea exactly came from, was this idea of best practices, or excuse me, only practices. And what I did is I challenged myself to do things that no one else in my sphere of influence was doing. And I spent time with my notepad and a pen, creativity, coming up with ideas that no one else was doing. And I'll give you a couple examples. So if you're in real estate on this call, highly competitive market. I just got off the phone with Brian Kruger, had some amazing results in Vegas, and we're expecting it to shift a little bit. Still going to do great because he's a champion. A lot of the industry better get out now. Or they better instill only practices because it's too competitive. You're not going to win doing what everyone else is doing right now. It won't work, will not work. You will be out of business if you keep doing what you were doing pre-coronavirus. You got to get hungry and you got to execute a plan. So an only practice is something that no one on your teams do. No one in your sphere does. You could create an only practice as a coach. You could create an only practice as a salesperson. And so what I did is came up with a list of only practices. Now, I'm telling you, this is not for the weak, but we're not in the market of being complacent. And I told you I was going to be strong. I hope I didn't lose half of this crowd, Tony. You probably never have me back. I'm too strong. So the only practice I had was to show up the earliest in my building every day. I made that commitment for 1 year, Tony. There are people on this chat that watched me do that.
Wow.
And what happened is I'd show up at, let's say, 6 a.m. Everyone else shows up at 7. That was a pattern of an only practice. Now, I could go into later, I don't have time tonight, of all the benefits. I had an only practice to always go to my leadership and ask questions and formulate great questions. That was an only practice. Nobody was doing that. So I would suggest creating your own only practices. Get creative. Write down things that no one else is going to do or willing to do in your industry. That's the type of thinking that's going to produce sustainable results. If not, there could be a lot of pain. If you weren't crushing results, if you weren't dominating results before coronavirus, time to step up. You were complacent. If you were producing and a top producer, time to step up, right? There's a shift. So that's my advice tonight.
Awesome. Well, I'll take that lead and I'll throw out one that I have been sharing this whole time. And since I know we got a lot of new people on this call that have not heard me, been around.
Sure.
So I would suggest that relationship is what is going to matter. It's the equivalent of your only practice. And what I mean by relationship, especially in sales, is connecting with the person, the human being across the table from you. Being able to connect to that person and understand, first of all, what is going on in your life. How'd you navigate this? What has been the challenge for you, right? Connecting with them on that personal level. Now, you may not know the person right off, so that might be kind of an odd question to ask, but if you've got people, go through I'm going to use the term Rolodex. I'm sure a couple of you at least know what a Rolodex is, right?
Nice.
Go through your CRM systems, your Rolodex, whatever it is. Go to those people that you haven't talked to in a while. And what every other, let's talk about all the other regular average, maybe even some top performers out there will be doing is they'll be calling them all up. And they're going to be reaching out, emailing, calling, all this kind of stuff. And guess what? All those contacts are going to be inundated and they're not going to respond. So if you want to do it, my suggestion is this. Number one, use video, only video. Do a quick recording. There, you can do it on your iPhone, whatever else. The tools are out there. You can do it. If you don't know how, find someone who would help you do it. All you have to do is record a really quick 30-second to 1 minute message. There's services out there if you need to do that. But reach out to them, say, hey, Bob, Sally, Joe, whomever it is, was thinking about you, just wanted to know you to know that I was thinking about you. I hope you've come through this okay. When the time is right, reach out to me. Let's just chat about how you're doing. If there's anything I can help you with, let me know. That's it. You touch them on a personal level. People you haven't talked to in a while, that's all you need to do is reach out to them. It's not about selling. It's about connecting. And I say that because what happens is if you do that, you're going to be one of the only people that do this. And they're going to be getting emails, they're going to be getting phone calls, and they're going to stop answering those things. Email is going to take a hit this time. But video, I just read a report the other day that on Facebook, as an example, only 15% of the millions of posts a day are videos. Of that, about 1% of all the posts out there are Facebook Lives, like we're doing right here.
Wow.
Which is why I keep doing it, because I'm like, well, I guess I'm in that top tier, the 1%.
You're an only practice guy.
Beyond that, why do we stay going for an hour? Well, because we know we're delivering tons of value. I can see the people engaging on here and all that.
Sure.
But we go for an hour because we're adding value. And that's when they find that after the hour, people really start to engage. It's like they're used to the 3-minute message, the 5-minute message, the pre-recorded stuff, everyone getting on doing the thing. But when you're on Facebook Live for an hour as like you and I, Chris, we're here to deliver. We're not just wasting time. We're here to deliver.
No.
People are like, they see us, they scroll through, they see us once, like, oh, Chris and Tony, okay, that's interesting. They pass by, they come back 35, 40 minutes, 60 minutes later. What the heck are these guys talking about? They're still on there. What did I miss, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There is very few people doing hour-long Facebook Lives. So that's an example. It's building relationship. It's connecting. It's giving value, right? So that's kind of an element of it. But going deeper in the relationship side, why it matters more now than ever before. And if you're in the hospitality industry, travel industry, I will give you this one. I have studied 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, and 2-star hotels. I've never done a 1-star hotel, but I've done a 2-star hotel in Nashville, so
Tony, nobody on this call, by the way, nobody that I work with works in a 1-star hotel.
I don't know if the reason they're 1-star hotels, no one works there.
5-star all the way, all of them.
Right. Okay. But this holds true across all of them. And I'll challenge you. You guys can take this challenge on. Go to TripAdvisor. Okay. You will find that 5-star review on TripAdvisor. There's one common thing. 95% of 5-star reviews, they mention the human connection, the person at the front desk, the housekeeper, the manager. You go to the 4-star reviews, less than 50% of them mention the human being. That is the one distinguishing factor of all others. You go down to the ones, they mention a human being again in all capital letters. They were rude. They stole from me. They were terrible. I'm never coming back. Don't waste your money at this place, right? The human connection is what drives a 5-star review, because people admire other people who have skills that they don't have, who are masters of what they do. They admire people who are kind and good and generous. So be that person. They are in awe when they connect to something bigger than themselves, and they see that, wow, this brand, this person is connected. You just talked about the Ritz-Carlton and that best practice that they have. That kind of puts you in awe a bit, like, wow, this place is amazing. And gratitude. If you can inspire the admiration of skill, admiration of goodness, awe, or gratitude in any person, those are the 4 specific emotions that have been identified by psychologists. They're called other praising emotions. And when you inspire those, people want to go out. They cannot help but go out and talk about you to everyone else.
Wow.
And so those there, if you can do the things that inspire one or more of those in an individual, you will get them talking about you, which means it's word of mouth marketing. How many of you have heard of that, right? They're going to be telling other people, hey, I don't need to work with John or Bob or Chris or Tony today, but I heard you might need what they're selling. You might need what they're doing. So why don't you check them out? They're amazing people. Awesome. That would be what I would say is focus on really moving people that state where you're so good at what you do. You're so kind. You're such a master. You move them to awe or you move them to gratitude that they want to talk about you. Don't focus on your product. Don't focus on your service. Focus on being that human being that elevates them.
Ooh, Tony Bodo. Are you kidding me? That's exactly, I mean, I come from a hospitality and sales leadership industry, spot on. And I know that you can say that with confidence that you've studied that work and the effect and it shows, by you doing this here tonight with me and, sharing this with the people that are willing to tune in. So with that being said, Tony, I think, create some only practices, figure out how to increase these relationships. His only practice of the video for people that are in contact with somebody, that's an only step up. I'm telling you, that's brilliant. People pay Tony for that information. So go do that. And thirdly, I would say, come up with your journal, get writing again, and ask yourself, what are 3 things you can do to become a champion in this marketplace? And
Absolutely.
you come up with the answers. What are 3 things I can do to, make sure I have success in this marketplace? And with that being said, Tony, you want to close this thing out? Is there anything else you wanted to add? I've got to go into another meeting this evening.
No, honestly, Chris, this has been phenomenal. I don't want to add anything to this, but what I do want to say is, will you promise to come back? Because this was phenomenal. And I know there's so much more that we can talk about. We can give value. I'd love to have you come back.
Well, I'll come back on one condition, Tony, that someone puts in the writing they'd like me to come back. And I'd like us to come back. Maybe this is the Tony and Chris, Friday night show. But
nice.
If we get some comments of people that like this and want us to do this, this is something we chose to do. And
yeah,
if it's received, you better believe it. I'd be right back there with you, Tony. I'm excited for everything. If you could give the viewers anything you have coming down the pike, maybe share with them, what's the name of the blog? You have a new blog.
New podcast. Yeah. New podcast.
New podcast.
Yep. So yeah, we just launched a podcast last week. It's called the Really Know Your Customer podcast. Really Know Your Customer podcast. It's on all major platforms.
Write this down. The Really Know Your Customer. The Really Know Your Customer podcast.
Yeah.
Write that down, everybody.
Absolutely. If you want to, if you want to check it out, listen to an episode or so, see if you like it, if it resonates with you. We only talk to CEOs. And so just to put it in perspective, that's who we're talking to. So if you want to be selling to CEOs, hear what the CEOs are telling you, why the CEOs want to know their customer, and that'll give you insights as to how to sell to them too. So we only talk to CEOs, as my co-author Betsy for the book Profitability. We get on there. She works with CEOs as well every day, just like I do. And so it's I think it's an awesome podcast. It's not like anything else out there. It's not just about customer experience per se, like the satisfaction scores. It's really about knowing who the people are that are across the table from you or on the other side of the camera from you. And so if you want to check that out, that'd be awesome. Chris,
that'd be a good only practice. If you haven't done podcasts before, sign up for a podcast host and go out there and find Tony's podcast and start listening. And then, for me, it'd be really, if anyone has any questions, go to performancewithpower.com. It's a long one, performancewithpower.com. And on the front page of my website is schedule an appointment. And the only thing that we could do is have a conversation at this point. One of the mottos and mantras for our company, Tony, at Performance with Power, is that we believe that every decision, that one decision can change the rest of your life. Yes. And, make a good decision today. So thank you, Mr. Tony Bodo. This has been amazing.
Well, Chris, I got to tell you, so I'm going to scroll up here. So hold on for one more minute if you got it. We've got well, let me say this. We've got a ton of comments. You're going to have to go back and read all the comments that come through the Facebook Live there. But you have at least 3 requests that I'm counting to come back.
Great. Well, then I'll come back. You and I'll do this again. That sounds good to me. All right, Tony. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Chris. It's been awesome.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.